Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rakesh Pabu. I'm the CEO for Westcon Comstore in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm coming to you today from Johannesburg, but a warm welcome to all of you. And I know we have people from across the African continent joining us on this platform today. Today's event is about Palo Alto and Westcon's A Day in the Life of a Hacker. And I hope it'll be a really interesting session for all of you. First off, maybe just for those of you who are new to our venue platform, this is the virtual environment that you are in. Just a quick understanding of if you have any issues in terms of the platform during the day and any struggling, please just put a request into the chat and our technical team will do their best to help you out. We have a couple of hundred, I believe, partners and people joining us from across Africa today. Our session will be just around 2 hours and hoping that you'll enjoy the time with us. We have some space. If you have any questions along the way for any of our speakers, please put those into the chat function and ask those questions. We'll collate all of those, and in a Q&A session that we've got near the end of the event today, I'll go through those questions with the team and answer them for you. We've also got 2 quizzes that will be running during the day in the speakers slots, and there's some great prizes that I'll announce at the end. So please keep track of what the speakers are saying, listen to their presentations and answer their questions. Hopefully there's a prize in it for you later in the afternoon. So as I mentioned, the session today really is around how to manage and secure your business in the event of a breach. And we'll talk to how Palo Alto can effectively help you secure your organization in utilizing Cortex XDR. So, one of I think many years ago in the security space, cybersecurity professionals had to trawl through logs of data to see if a breach had actually occurred. And if something was found, there was a lot of time and effort spent having to look and track down what that breach may have impacted in terms of the organization. And also many siloed tools resulted in having security professionals moving from consoles to try and figure out what exactly that was. Over time, technology's improved, but there's still very often a siloed approach in terms of how to detecting and responding to breaches. And what we want to hopefully be able to show you today is, firstly, what an ethical hacker will give you a view of what's happening and the trends in hacking. And then Palo Alto will talk about how the Cortex solution can help you better detect and prevent those attacks, and how you can safeguard your entire organization with an extended detection and response platform. And that will help your security teams filter through the data that they receive and be able to identify threats a lot quicker and in a more automated fashion using things like machine learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to invite our first speaker of the day to join us. William Vermaak is a security analyst for Orange Cyber Defense and SensePost. William has been in the IT industry for well over 21 years, gathering knowledge from various aspects of IT, including networking, server infrastructure, programming, and electronics, who has a very complete view of what happens in most IT environments. And he combines all of that knowledge to help companies secure their perimeters against threats in the open internet. He's been an ethical hacker and a penetration tester for 5 years, and he loves to share knowledge on all aspects surrounding cybersecurity. So William, welcome up onto the virtual stage.
Hey, everyone. Thank you very much, Rakesh.
Thanks a lot, William, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. Welcome to a day in the life of a hacker. As Rakesh said, my name is William Vermaak, and I'm a security analyst with Orange Cyber Defense. Before we begin, I'd like to just do a quick disclaimer. Please don't try any of the techniques shown in this presentation, as you will probably get in trouble. In some countries, like the United States, it's even illegal to do a port scan on a government PC. Doing so will get the tinted window squad to your door pretty quickly, and they are very quick. Now, just a quick overview of what we'll cover today. Firstly, I will attempt to explain hackers a bit. Well, I'm going to do my best. And then we'll do a quick drill down into bug bounties. We'll cover the basic hacker methodology. And then it's story time, with me probably going off on a tangent about passwords. And finally, some security tips. Now, there's 3 questions in this presentation that you can answer using the chat. And if you've got any questions, throw them in chat. I'll be available in the Q&A session afterwards, and we'll address all of your questions. Well, you all pretty much know what a hacker is, but we've got a nice way of explaining what we do to regular folk. We find ways of making something that we've got do something that we want it to do. For example, modifying your alarm clock to switch on the coffee machine when it wakes you up. Now, that's the essential definition of a hacker. Now, you might ask, aren't all hackers bad? The answer is easy. No, not really. There are 2 types of hackers. The good guys we call ethical hackers, and then the bad guys we'll call, well, the bad guys. The bad hackers will use any means to exfiltrate information that can be used for extortion or to gain access to systems with nefarious intentions. This is where we as ethical hackers come in. We are helping businesses and individuals secure their infrastructure. We find the holes in the fence and help businesses plug them. In order to do this, we need to do a lot of research to keep up with the ever-changing landscape and to stay ahead of the bad guys, of course. We also need to think like the bad guys. We call this the evil bit. Now, under the broad hacker space, there's quite a lot of disciplines that you can explore. Here's a couple of examples. One part of hacking that's making quite big waves is the biohacking movement. They design, grow, and extract their own biomaterials using only open source hardware they fabricate themselves. They've made bioink, biopolymers, biofuel, and even bioengineered some strawberries to taste like apples using only equipment that they have built themselves. Then there's the car hackers. They play around with the awesome computers that's equipped in most of the new cars. They can modify values to enable secret features that only the factory knows about, giving them ultimate power over their vehicles, being able to monitor every single sensor equipped in the car. Now, one group of hackers have found a way of installing Doom on the car's computer and controlling the character with the steering wheel and the pedals. Now, this is cool, but not really viable. Then we've got the airplane hackers. Well, there's not a lot I can say about them. They usually work very closely with airplane manufacturers, finding bugs in the software that could cause havoc when the plane is in the air. Satellite hacking is pretty new, with NASA donating the first ever satellite to the hacker community this year for the sole purpose of breaking it and finding ways of breaking it. Then there's the ATM hackers. These guys are super good at what they do, hacking ATMs to dispense all the money inside or faking traffic to the bank server, telling the ATM that there's enough money in the account and to go ahead and dispense the withdrawal. These hackers also work very closely with the banking sector to disclose any bugs they find to make the systems more secure for us. And finally, there's the body hackers. They build implants to make their lives easier or to monitor a certain aspect of their bodies. Most of these implants have a range of sensors which sends data to any Wi-Fi device of the hacker's choosing, allowing them to monitor their bodies in ways that have never been possible. This group also combined the biohacking aspect to create the first 3D printable human tissue. They can print ears and noses that can be used as is for transplant to patients. Now, in the same way we as pen testers make a living from performing penetration tests, there's a group out there that hunts for bugs in the software for a living. These guys are known as the bug bounty crowd. There are dedicated bug bounty programs that you can join and search for bugs in software. The software vendor will put out a bounty on a bug, for instance, Adobe, will put out a bounty on cross-site scripting for $4,000. Now, if you can find a way to perform a cross-site scripting attack on their application, they will pay you $4,000 for finding it and telling them how you did it. That way they can fix it and protect the users of their software. Now, this is a very important part of the vendor's development cycle and why you should regularly update your software. Vendors will make the appropriate fixes to their software and release a patch to mitigate the issues. If you don't update, you'll be vulnerable to the exploits found by these guys. Now it's time for some hacker stats. Now this slide shows the top 10 countries that are actively participating in bug bounties. As we all pretty much expected, India is number 1, with the USA following in number 2. Here we can see the average age of bug bounty hackers, with the majority being between 18 and 24 years old. Next up, we have how these hackers learn their skills. Now 34% is self-taught, while 36% use online resources to learn more. And lastly, we have what they love hacking the most, with web applications standing out high above all the others. Now, this is your chance to win some prizes. What is the first step to compromising a network? Okay. Well done. Go for it, guys. Go for it. Awesome stuff. Well done. We're almost done with this question, so keep the fingers on the keyboard. Well done, guys. Okay. And I think that's it. So the correct answer was reconnaissance. Well done. Okay, so to perform a basic attack on a network, there's 3 stages to these attacks. Firstly, we've got recon and the initial compromise. Hackers will do reconnaissance on their target and gather any and all information they can gather regarding employees, exposed infrastructure. They will even check to see if they will get a response to some basic attacks. Let's say you have a web application hosted on the internet. They will perform a simple brute force attack to establish whether the web application locks the account or if they will be blocked by a WAF, a web application firewall. Now, using all the data collected, they will try to compromise the network using any means necessary. Once they've breached the network perimeter, they need to escalate their privileges to an admin account to ensure they have persistent network access. The privilege escalation is usually done using vulnerabilities in the operating system. Now, this is one of the reasons why all operating systems need to be kept up to date. Persistent network access is also important. If someone detects the initial vector, and let's say they change the password, then all his work is lost. So he will create another way to get onto the network by implementing implants on the network. These implants can be created using Covenant, Empire, or even Cobalt Strike. It all depends on the situation. And lastly, we have actions on objectives, where the attacker completes his mission, whether he set out to exfiltrate data, to blackmail the company, or even to distribute ransomware on the network. I've added indicators on each slide top right so you can follow along with the methodology. And with that, it's story time. If you will indulge me for a moment while I tell you a story of a hacker that hacked Acme Inc. Here we've got a happy hacker that just bought an anvil online from Acme Inc. Unfortunately, they delivered a left-handed anvil when he required a right-handed one. He quickly writes an email to customer service and gets an unsatisfactory response. Now a happy hacker is distraught with sadness and turns that into rage. He searches on social media networks to find employees of Acme Inc. Since he's already exchanged emails with them, he knows that their email addresses are created using the first letter of the user's first name and their complete surname. Armed with this almost innocent knowledge, he can now create a list of targets. Using this list of targets, he can perform phishing attacks, like sending a mail requiring the user to enter their passwords, or he can brute force passwords on exposed infrastructure, like VPN gateways or Exchange servers. He can even use this to perform spear phishing attacks, targeting a specific individual. Now, granted, he will have to do a lot more research before he can pull that one off, but the card is on the table. Now, let's look at the company perimeter. Most companies look like this. They have a website, a VPN gateway, and an Exchange server. Now, to brute force Exchange, the chances are good that it will be configured with a logout policy of 3 tries. So if the hacker wants to be stealthy, that's not a very good target. The website is questionable. If the website contains juicy information like payment details, it'll make sense that the website becomes a target. Now, VPN gateways are known for their poor password policies, since admins get tired of users forgetting their passwords, so they usually have no lockout. And if he gets access here, he will have access to the whole network. So he decides to give it a bash, but he's only got one half of the puzzle, the username. He still needs a password to use. So he hops onto the darknet and searches for breaches where these addresses were compromised. And look at that. He found a password for WCoyote and BBunny. With the data, he also found WCoyote's address and mobile phone number. Now, these data breaches are treated like currency on the dark web, and it's not difficult to get your hands on the latest breach data. There are services out there like haveabeenpwned.com where you can check in what breaches your email address and password was leaked. I highly suggest you use these services to check if you have been compromised. Now, there's two routes that may lead to success. We've got the social engineering part, where the hacker phones the target and plays the role of someone important, like IT security asking for their password to move their account to Office 365, for example. You can even throw in a bit of information in there to make it seem more legit, like confirming his mobile phone number. Since the majority of hackers don't do people very well, we'll go with the brute forcing. The passwords he found on the dark web gives him an idea as to what the target's like carrots or maybe a hobby like chasing a bird. Now, using iterations of these passwords are very successful. The fact that he's got 2 email accounts doubles his chances of pulling off a successful attack. Now, there's a whole lot of tools available to perform brute force attacks on pretty much anything that has a password. Using one of these tools on the VPN gateway, our hacker has found valid credentials. Now he has full access to the network. Yes, I know the password had nothing to do with carrots, but I can guarantee you that COVID 2020 is on every hacker's password list. Now our attacker is on the network and have access to pretty much everything. First thing he needs to do is scan the network to find out what's around him. Our situational awareness is super important. So he starts a quick scan to find devices on the network that he can access. This is the first event on the network that could be flagged as suspicious. However, Acme Inc. never invested in any security devices, so it goes unnoticed. Our attacker finds a domain controller that is vulnerable to a remote code execution exploit. Acme Inc. never worried about patching servers and PCs on the network with the latest patches. Now, for our attacker, this is great news. Using an exploit that's available on GitHub, he quickly gains access to the domain controller. And the bonus is he now has administrative privileges on that domain controller. He quickly adds an admin account for himself on the domain, and it's synced across the whole forest. While he's on the DC, he decides to dump the NTDS using Mimikatz. The NTDS on the DC contains a whole company's user list and their hashed NTL and passwords. He exfiltrates this file and puts it on his crack rig to see if he can get some more credentials. Now that he's got the NTDS of Acme Inc., he decides he might as well make some money. So once again, he heads off to the dark web and puts the data up for sale. And in no time, he's made a couple of Bitcoin. Now, our next question. What program helps vendors find and fix bugs? Okay, guys, answers. Fingers on the keyboards. There we go. Well done, guys. Very nice. Okay, awesome stuff. Last couple of seconds. Well done. Okay, so 88.7% of you were correct. It's bug bounties. Now, let's go into password cracking 101. I'm sure everyone knows what a brute force attack is. It's when you take a massive list of passwords and try them on a single account that the attacker knows it exists. Now, even though the attack is pretty simple to get underway, it's also very easily defeated. Strong password enforcement rules, captchas, flood limits, and fail to ban are pretty effective at stopping a brute force attack, especially when used together. Now let's take a look at password spraying. The term is not as well known as brute forcing, but it's actually quite similar. Now, password spraying is almost the opposite of brute forcing. It's trying the smallest number of passwords on the biggest number of accounts possible. Now, to explain credential stuffing as quickly as possible, it's using stolen or leaked credentials to gain access to other services. So what our angry hacker effectively done was a credential stuffing attack first, and then he moved on to a brute force attack. Now, the ability to crack passwords using computer programs is also a function of the number of possible passwords per second, which can be checked. Now, if a hash of the target password is available to the attacker, this number can be in the billions or trillions per second, since an offline attack is possible. Now, for some kind of password hashes, ordinary desktop computers can test over 100 million passwords per second using password cracking tools, running on a general purpose CPU, and billions of passwords per second using GPU-based password cracking tools like Hashcat. Now, the rate of password guessing depends heavily on the cryptographic function used by the system to generate these password hashes. Now, a suitable password hashing function, such as bcrypt, is many orders of magnitude better than a naive function, like simple MD5 or SHA. Now, a user-selected 8-character password with numbers, mixed case, and symbols, with commonly selected passwords and other dictionary matches filtered out, reaches an estimated 30-bit strength, according to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, 2 to the power of 30 is only 1 billion permutations, and would be cracked in seconds if the hashing function is naive. When ordinary desktop computers are combined in a cracking effort, as can be done with botnets, the capabilities of password cracking are considerably extended. Now, graphics processors can speed up password cracking by a factor of 50 to 100 over general-purpose computers for specific hashing algorithms. As of 2011, available commercial products claim the ability to test up to 2.8 billion passwords a second. Now, let that sink in. It's 2.8 billion with a B passwords a second on a standard desktop computer using a high-end graphics processor. Such a device can crack a 10-letter single-case password in 1 day. Now, the work can be distributed over many computers for an additional speed-up proportional to the number of available computers, with comparable GPUs, of course. However, some algorithms are even specifically designed to run slow on GPUs. Examples include TripleDes, bcrypt, scrypt, and Argon. Now, this is a list of the top 10 passwords used in 2020. As you can see, it's pretty terrible. With technology evolving every single day, password complexity has gone out the window, being substituted with longer passwords or passphrases. Enough about passwords for now. Let's get back to our angry hacker. Now, to quickly summarize where our attacker is at, he's completed the recon stage and he was successful with his initial compromise. By using a known vulnerability on an outdated server, he was able to escalate his privileges to an admin on the domain. So what is next? Persistence, of course. He needs to set up another way of getting onto the network should his initial vector be compromised. Since he's on the DC, he can see which users belong to which groups. So he checks to see who is part of the finance group and finds mouse. Good time to do some spear phishing. So he creates a C2 server and creates a heavily obfuscated payload. He sends an email to the target saying that bbunny has shared a file with him via Dropbox. And to view it, he must click on a link. Knowing bbunny, there's no suspicion, and mouse clicks on the link. Now our attacker have got 2 ways into the network. One is using the VPN, and the other is using his C2 implant that has just called home to his C2 server. Using this implant, he can capture keystrokes, record the screen, have access to a terminal, and even take pictures using the webcam. Now, using the terminal, he checks the ARP cache and see that the machine have got access to a network that he hasn't been on yet. Time to do some pivoting. So obviously, the network he's on is segmented. So he sets up a tunnel and pivots using the compromised machine to access the new network. Once again, the cycle starts from the beginning. He explores to see what is around him by doing a quick network scan. Lo and behold, he's found the payroll server. After some more enumeration, he found the SQL database that's using default credentials. Dumping this database gives him access to every employee's payment details, how much they earn, and even their tax numbers. Now the attack vectors are becoming massive. You can use all of this data to spearfish or social engineer more targets, eventually leading to a total network takeover. And all of the employees' personal data is available somewhere on the dark web. Quick questions and answers. Name any of the hacker disciplines mentioned in this talk. Okay, guys, fingers on the keyboards. Well done. I should have made this question, name your favorite hacker discipline. Well done, guys. Well done. Okay, I can see the biohackers have probably hit the spot right there. Couple more seconds. Okay, well done, everyone. Okay, well, there wasn't really a wrong answer there, but you got the ideas. Okay, now to get back to our methodology. Our attacker have now completed all the stages of his attack. And with the new data he's acquired from the payroll server, he can start the whole process from the start to compromise even more accounts and possibly start attacking people within the company. Now, somehow the IT department detected something dodgy is going on. So they call an ethical hacker to perform an incident response. Now, it's important to note that Acme Inc. has got no login solution. So our poor ethical hacker is stuck with the very sparse default log files on most of the devices. Most logs are not very verbose by default, which means that our ethical hacker is going to have a really bad time to try and figure out what exactly happened on this network. Now, you are probably thinking, what did I just watch? Now, this was the basic blueprint of 80% of the breaches that happened because of weak passwords being used or default credentials being left on devices. The other 20% are made up of devices that aren't patched with latest security updates. So they have serious flaws and they advertise their outdated version numbers on the internet. Now, according to a quick showdown search, there's currently 175,000 devices on the open internet with a username admin and password admin. Now, that is scary. Now, whether it's weak passwords, someone clicking on a phishing mail, or leaving default credentials on devices, everything is because someone made a decision to do it. Now, humans have and always will be the weakest link, which is where my colleague's amazing product slots in. But before I give her the floor, some security tips. Make use of password managers. They will manage your super long passwords for you on all of your devices. Some of them support fingerprint authentication, so you don't even have to enter your passphrase to access your passwords. Forget absolutely everything you know about passwords. Use passphrases. An example I always use is from one of my favorite poets, Once Upon a Midnight Dreary. Now that's a decent password length, not overly complex, and it will take a long time to crack. Enable two-factor authentication on all your internet accounts that supports it. This is, for example, when you log into your Facebook account. It will send you a PIN to your mobile phone that you need to enter when you log into your account. That way you will immediately know if your account is being tampered with, and if the attacker doesn't have access to your mobile phone, you're safe. And lastly, but most important, do not click on links in emails, no matter how legit they look. That's me. I hope you've enjoyed this quick view into a hacker's world and given you ideas of how to protect yourself and your company on the internet we fondly call the Wild West. If you've got any questions, I'll be available in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, William. Sorry, I was busy changing all my passwords very quickly there. No more admin. But that was really insightful, really well explained. Thank you very much. It was great to hear from you, and look forward to having you back in the Q&A session where we can get some questions from our audience and I can put them across to you. Okay.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. Right, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, as I said at the beginning, we want to talk about Palo Alto's Cortex XDR. And really what Cortex XDR is designed to do is to help your businesses, your customers' businesses, manage all of the various siloed tools, but actually provide security specialists with a much quicker and easier way to identify, investigate, and manage threats into their environment. Cortex XDR helps detect advanced threats utilizing analytics, AI, and machine learning. It helps reduce alert rates by up to 98%. It makes investigation times up to 8 times faster and stops attacks without degrading the performance of your network, and also helps maximize ROI. And joining me today to go through this is Lee Tompkinson from Palo Alto Networks. Lee is the pre-sales engineer for Cortex Solutions, based here in Johannesburg. Lee's been in cybersecurity since 2007. She's supported many enterprise customers as a technical consultant and has implemented a diverse portfolio of security technologies. She's also specialized in compliance management and threat protection, and assisted a lot of customers with reviewing their strategies and advising them on how to mature their vision. She's worked for customers, resellers, and now with Palo Alto Networks, so understands many different environments, the challenges, but as well also the different perspectives of how to deal with those. Her passion sits with incident response, and she has helped customers advise during active breaches and provided recommendations that not only cover technology, but also that covered the technologies that she represents, but her holistic view of a security environment. And she's technology agnostic and values integrity and honesty through all of her engagements. So Lee, welcome to our event.
Thank you so much for the introductions. So very interesting conversation that Williams has shared with us around hackers, massive respect to them. I definitely do think that, especially when you're speaking to customers or partners, to be able to support our customers, we need to obviously look at security holistically. Just some of the points that William has actually brought up, just your basic, such as patch management, making sure that you don't have end-of-life perimeter security, for example, enabling multi-factor authentication. Those simple security controls that you put in place can actually stop you from being breached. However, I'm going to really focus on Cortex today and just give you a brief understanding of what Cortex is about, Cortex XDR to be specific. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to jump into a demo just to explain how we would actually take a spear phishing attack and actually show you how we investigate that. So as William was talking about, there's various different ways that they can actually penetrate into a network. We also see that through time, we've also seen an increase of malware and new malicious programs being registered. Now, if you look at it, especially during COVID, we saw a lot of organizations being hit during COVID, a lot through spear phishing attacks, and obviously we see a lot of ransomware. There's various other things like PowerShell attacks that we see living off the land, fileless-based type attacks. You hear these kind of things going, being spoken about in the security industry. So what Cortex XDR really does, as it says, is it tries to make the security analyst's life a lot easier. Okay, and what we do, what the problem statement is when we start to help customers, is we start to look at all the different types of alerts that they're receiving. Now, the problem is a lot of customers might have not a lack of technologies. They've got a bunch of technologies, right? But how do we actually look at that data that's coming in and make sense of it? Now, I've seen some mature customers running, obviously, a SIM implementation, or they might ask a reseller to actually offer SOC services. And then through that SIM, they actually have to start doing correlation rules. Now, this is where the maturity gap kind of is highlighted. I've seen in breaches where customers get all these alerts, and then they start to realize that they've got blind spots where they might not be receiving Active Directory logs from specific domain controllers, or they might be lacking logs from the firewalls. And what happens is then it creates a very complex investigation when you start to look at where did it all begin, okay, and how did they get in. So what really differentiates our product and we call it extended detection and response, so Cortex XDR, is we help try break down those silos. So instead of a customer having to have a separate endpoint protection solution or even having a separate user behavior analytics solution and a network detection and response, we can actually start to bring that all into one central console. We also bring in the endpoint detection and response. Now, what's really great about this product is that it is modular, so customers can decide what modules they need to take on. However, if they take the full platform, there's a lot of power in doing that, right? And I'm going to go through that a little bit more. Now, if we look at what Cortex Data Lake can actually do, and please pay attention because there's obviously going to be questions and answers, and we've got some amazing vouchers to give away for the right answers. So please pay attention. We can ingest data from our Palo Alto next-gen firewalls. Obviously, there's customers out there that aren't Palo Alto next-gen firewall customers, and that's where you kind of fit into the third-party data. So the third-party data can be your Fortis, your Ciscos, your checkpoint firewalls, just to name but a few. And we can ingest that data from the network and bring that into our Cortex Data Lake. We can also bring in the data from the endpoint and obviously from the cloud. So the cloud, we support VM series. We also support our global protector access logs. And then we can also bring in other third-party data like your Windows domain controllers, Azure logs, and Okta authentication logs. Now, if you think about the power of this, the security analyst basically is getting all this data pulled into Cortex Data Lake. And the Cortex XDR console allows that security analyst to access all that information here. What's also important is that there's no need for correlation rules. We automatically do that stitching internally in the console itself. So when we see something coming in from the network, we can start to stitch that against the endpoint data that we're receiving. Also, because the security analyst doesn't always have access to the firewall logs, for example, it helps them not having to run to the firewall team to actually get that data. It's all within the Cortex Data Lake, and they can do some very specific queries if they wanted to. What they can also do is look at the authentication logs coming in from the domain controllers and also from Okta, which also gives them some kind of advanced threat hunting capability to actually see what actually happened. Okay. So just to kind of jump into the demo, that's just the very short of XDR. But what the demo is going to cover and what I'd like to actually show you is a typical spear phishing attack. We've got a product called a remote access tool called Quasar. And for the demo, what we've done is we've actually gone and disabled all our prevention capabilities. Now, in any kind of breach, we're using the typical upset framework. Now, what the upset framework does is it starts to ask you what users were involved in this particular incident. What persistent mechanisms were used to stay in the environment? So there's obviously a lot of persistence mechanisms that can be used. For example, scheduled task is one of them. We can also create registry keys and various other ways that we can actually get a foothold. What system, internal or external, are involved in the incident? So what host machines, what users? What's the end game? So what were they trying to achieve? Were they trying to get data out the network? Were they trying to get a whole bunch of credentials for credential access to additional servers, for example? And then what tactics and techniques were actually used to do this? Now, any typical person that's trying to look at an incident needs to be able to answer these questions. And a lot of the times, customers have to pay incident response team to actually come do this job. And it's extremely expensive. Imagine having this at the fingertips. So I'm going to quickly dive into that. So if you look at the console, this is the Cortex XDR console. And typically what you have is you have specific incident management and dashboards, right? You can create these based on your environment and based on the roles. But just to give you an example, we've got a really good dashboard for MITRE. So if you think about the MITRE framework, it highlights different tactics and techniques, especially for certain attacks. And it's really important for a customer to understand what kind of tactics and techniques are happening within the environment. So this is a really good dashboard to actually give you that understanding. To go back to the incident management dashboard, as a security analyst, I'm going to see straight away my severities of my high, medium, and low. And I know where to focus my energy, okay? Everything is drillable. Now, we're obviously going to go into an investigation scenario. So As you can see, this is the list of all my incidents. You can change the severity based on what you want to target at. Obviously, if you want to target the severity highs, for example, you can obviously sort out the severity and decide which one you want to tackle first. As I mentioned, I'm going to focus on the spear phishing attack. And the reason why I want to do that, I think William also mentioned it, but we definitely did see this on the rise, especially during COVID. We had a lot of customers that obviously accessed specific spear phishing and a URL and the link. And then what happened is they had a lot of ransomware and a lot of encryption of their data and bringing their whole industry to a standstill. So I kind of like this particular use case. So when you want to actually access a specific incident, what you can do is you can right click on it and say view incident. Okay, and then it will obviously open up that particular incident. For just ease of use, with the demo, I've opened up my tabs here. And just to remember that I've actually gone and disabled all the prevention within our products, just so that I can show you that typically if a customer had some kind of configuration that was configured incorrectly, or maybe we've got an endpoint that doesn't have a particular protection agent on it, or maybe the firewall has a specific exploit that now has gone and been exploited and they've gotten somehow. Okay, so we need to look at those type of threats, and I'm going to show you how we've used the console to actually investigate. So as you can see, you straight away understand that there's some key artifacts. And again, pay attention because there's going to be questions and answers. You're going to see there's a whole bunch of key artifacts on the left-hand side. And what's nice about this is it tells you all the different types of files that have been involved in this particular incident. Now, if you look at how many benign files there are, that tells you that those are harmless files. However, harmless files can be used for malicious intent. So this is quite important to remember because a lot of traditional AV would not detect this, right? So we're looking for specific behaviors. We need analytics to be able to tell us this. So what we're doing is we now automatically submit these files to our Wildfire. As you can see, we've got different types of threat intelligence that we can integrate into the console. So the first one is our Wildfire. The second one is Virus Total. And the third one is Autofocus. Autofocus is Palo Alto's threat feed intelligence. And like I said, that is optional. However, those are the three intelligence threat feeds that we can bring in. Now, if you think about what a security analyst can do with this information, is straight away, this gives them the confidence to say that that particular file is not a false positive, right? When it's seen as malicious. What you can also see is that stitching that I talked about. Now, imagine receiving these alerts into a SIM. You'd have to do some fancy correlation rules to be able to make this into one incident. But instead, XDR is doing this for you. Now, the power of this is that XDR doesn't replace a SIM, but it makes a SIM's job a lot easier. You can forward this to a SIM for further analysis. Next, what you can do is you can also look at the threat intelligence report. So, for example, if I wanted to see what Wildfire has said, this is our cloud-based sandboxing, and it gives you a full overview of what it's seen that process is doing. What kind of network traffic, for example, has it been talking out to? So this is extremely powerful. Then on the right-hand side, you get your key assets. Now we've got 4 hosts and we've got 5 users that have been involved in this particular incident. This hasn't needed the security analyst to do the stitching. This has been automatically done by Cortex XDR. It takes the analytics and it can start to stitch those incidents together because it starts to see similarities in the behavior and what's actually happening. Same files, same processes, same kind of way that they're trying to actually infiltrate the network. Again, you see the stitching. So the next thing that we're going to see down here is we start to see certain alerts that have been stitched together. And the most important thing to mention here is obviously the alert source. Here you can see the alert sources that we receive information from. And this is not just an endpoint detection system. We're also receiving our XDR BIOCs. A BIOC is our behavioral indicators of compromise. These are written by our threat team, Unit 42. And what they do is they look for specific behaviors, which are indicators of compromise. And as soon as they see that, they'll create an alert. As you can see, the top 2 have been around file type obfuscation. The next one we see is obviously the XDR agent. And if we scroll down, we can start to see the stitching of our next-gen firewalls as well. Okay, so that's just to show you how we're bringing all that data together and we're starting to stitch it through. As you can see, all our actions have been set to report only for the demo. But in a scenario where we had our configuration in a prevention mode, we probably would have blocked this already. Next, you're going to see different categories. So you're going to see all the different categories, whether it's been evasion or credential access. And again, straight away, by just scrolling through this, I, as a security analyst, can quickly see this is quite severe, right? So I'm already seeing some kind of credential access. I'm already seeing some kind of evasion. I'm already seeing some kind of tampering. So this is really, really important. We need to put a stop. So if we also look at the insights, and I just want to pivot into there, and hopefully my demo is not too slow today, so let's just give that some time. But what's really nice about going into insights is straight away, again, you've got another glimpse of exactly what kind of categories we're seeing. Now, straight away, we see there's collection, there's credential access, there's discovery. Now, if you remember back to what William was sharing on his, this is all part of what hackers do, right? So they're discovering, there's some kind of evasion that they're trying to do. There's some kind of execution. There's lateral movement. There's persistence. There's reconnaissance. So you can actually see how far down the kill chain they really are. Okay, and this gives you a lot more insight than most systems do. Next, what we want to do is obviously go back to alerts. And if we wanted to go back to alerts and say, for example, start to investigate C. Collier, because we want to actually see what happened. Why does C. Collier have 32 alerts, for example? We're going to right-click on there. Now, I've got two different options. I've got Analyze and I've got Investigate in Timeline. That's a way that we can actually investigate what's happening on those machines. For this demo, I'm going to show you the Analyze, which is going to open up into the Causality view. And I've opened up that tab here just to save some time. Straight away, you see the Causality view. Now, this is pretty powerful because if you think about it, I'm not just seeing what happened on the endpoint, I'm also seeing what happened on the network. And if I was taking data from, say, Windows logs, I could also stitch that into the console, right? So straight away, I can see exactly what C. Collier actually did. What happened was, it was obviously a spear phishing attack, came in, and what we can see is that 7-Zip was actually extracting the file, and inside there was the file Avengers. Now, if you look at that, straight away, we see the double extension, which is already an alert to our security brains, telling us that this is malicious, right, because it's a double extension. But to a typical user, they might think it's a typical MP4, so a video that they may watch. Next, we can see that Quasar Client actually starts up. Now, if you go do some investigation on what Quasar Client is, it's a remote access tool. You can also see little alerts on the top-hand side where you can see that this alert came from the XDR agent picking up from Wildfire that this was actually malware. Okay, and we would have blocked this, right? But we're in report-only mode. Next, what we do is we see on the SVC host that we see some kind of RPC or code injection, and you see the exact command. So straight away, we know the exact command and exactly what this type of file is trying to do when it gets onto the system. Then we see, interestingly, another command line opening up, and we see the exact command just by highlighting over there. And we see Quasar Client opening up again. Now, if you do some investigation into Quasar Client, you actually can have elevated privileges now to a particular machine that you're on. And then we see two kind of workflows going on here. So we see the child process opening up scheduled task. Now, scheduled task, remember I talked about how persistence, scheduled tasks can actually be created within an endpoint. So for example, if they picked up a specific file, if that person reboots the machine, that specific process will start up again after reboot. Okay, so that's some kind of persistence that they've created, and you can see the exact command there. Now this helps with your remediation and cleanup. The next thing we also see is that a command line opens up, and we see multiple child processes. I'm just going to zoom out just to show you how many child processes are actually running just through this command line. Now, obviously, if we clicked on each of these, we could actually see exactly what command was being run within the proc dump, for example. And what we can also see is the different alerts that would have picked this up. So our BIOCs, our behavior indicators of compromise, pick this up. It's part of the evasion. We can also see another one, which is credential access. So our behavioral indicators of compromise picked up some kind of credential access. So this is really, really powerful and really something to pay attention to. Another thing that I just want to highlight before I show you the exact timeline of what happened here is if I click on the little alert on top of scheduled task, what we did very well was in the MITRE framework results, and we literally can show you when something is highlighted directly towards a MITRE attack, tactic, or technique. So here you can actually click on here, and straight away you can actually pivot into the MITRE attack, and it'll explain what persistence actually means. Again, we can click on that one, and straight away we see scheduled task job. So it gives you a lot more context of what this is potentially doing. Now, instead of having to go down to every single child process, I'm going to just quickly show you, if we had to go into the data, what kind of data we'd see. So straight away, we can see from this point that a recon.bat was actually run out of the recycle bin. Next, we can actually see that there was 10 files created and written to. So these 10 files are used for information to be written to. And then you can also see that they try to do a task kill on the protection on this particular endpoint. Next, you start to see a whole bunch of reconnaissance being done. I think William talked about the R-A. So they're doing a whole bunch of reconnaissance on the endpoint. You can see WMI being used, for example, various different commands. You can even see that they're trying to do a system info, so to understand what operating system, what service packs, for example. We can also see they're trying to access the event tools on the actual machine. And then they start to look at your typical net groups for like who's part of the domain admins, who's part of DevOps, who's contractors. So these are usually privileged groups with privileged accounts. So they're doing some kind of reconnaissance. And then you see something happening where there's a process dump. If we highlight over there, we can see they're trying to do an LSS dump. And then straight away, you see the use of Mimikatz, and they get an LSS dump from the domain controller. And there we see straight away, just by threat hunting. Remember, I talked about the amount of machines that we had picked up on the incident tab. So let me just quickly go there. Remember, I talked about how many host machines we knew were part of this. We've just, through threat hunting, actually picked up another machine that's been involved in there, which is the DC1. They've exported the user credentials and passwords to a CSV file. And then what you can also see is now they started doing lateral movement. So we see that the use of PSexec is happening, and you can already see they've got access to W. Sanchez's password, and they're accessing his machine through a remote. You can see exactly the same kind of files going on. So we're just going to highlight on some of these. You can see 102, 102. Now we've got 101, M. Rogers. Now, interestingly, M. Rogers doesn't have an XDR agent on. This alert was actually received from our next-gen firewalls, okay? Scroll up, we're still seeing 101. We can still see a lot of lateral movement. Now we're seeing 100, which is C. Chadwick again. And then we also see a net use happening. So now we actually see another account just through threat hunting. SE admin has also been compromised. So not only those users I mentioned in the beginning, but now we actually see SE admin has also been compromised, and mainly the password reset. Next, we start to see that they also accessed SQL tools. Now, if we highlight over there, there's another account that's been compromised, the SA. So the SA password to the SQL server has also been compromised. Another account, just through threat hunting and the visibility that XDR gives, it's actually given us more visibility, and we can see the exact SQL server that it accessed, 1.99. Then what we see is they start to create a backup file. And then we know straight away that that backup file is obviously the data from that SQL server. So now if you think about it, if we go back to the questions that I talked about around the upset framework, we need to understand the users that were involved in this. What systems may have been involved? What tactics and techniques was this particular person trying to do? And especially, what objective did they have? Straight away from just going through this demo with you guys, we know that they were after some data on that SQL server, and they were able to create a backup. And we know the users that have been compromised and may need their passwords reset. We also might need to isolate those machines for further investigation and check that there's been no further lateral movement. Now, just to also highlight, and this is where I've seen customers lose a lot of really good data. Even though they might have a SIM, or they've got some kind of way of looking at logs, straight away the adversary goes and clears the Windows logs. I've seen this so many times, and without those logs, nothing gets forwarded to the SIM, and you lose a lot of visibility. But the fact that you've been able to understand the full pathway or process that this particular person actually did and how they cleared those logs gives you a lot of insight into what they're actually doing. Now, I could go a lot further into it. Obviously, when you click on the various different processes, you can see that it automatically refreshes and you get some additional information. And every time I click on that, the information below here obviously changes. So for example, with Mimikatz, I can see there was a network connection, and straight away I can see the network connection of that particular machine. If there was any CNCs happening, I'd also see that too. Just to show you another user's machine that was obviously compromised. So remember we talked about W. Sanchez. W. Sanchez, exactly the same kind of process that went through from parent to child. We can see straight away exactly what happened. Now, we've also got some very other cool features inside the product. We've got something called Search and Destroy. There's various things I could talk about, but I hope that you see the power of what you could actually do with XDR and just the power of bringing all that data together and allowing that person to actually be able to have all that visibility. And plus, we also have some kind of responses. So if we wanted to isolate the machine, if we wanted to go and analyze specific files, we can use the Action Center to do that. We can use Live Terminal, which is a remote session onto the machines, and we can take action right from the console. So I'm going to quickly go to that. Any questions? Obviously, put them in the questions and answers. As I mentioned, there's going to be questions and answer now that you can actually partake in. There's 2 vouchers, which is really cool to give away. So the first voucher is for the person who gets the most answers right. The second voucher is for anybody who answers the quickest and gets the most answers right. So go for it.
Thanks a million, Lee. I think we're just giving people time to go and do the quiz.
Yeah, I hope they were listening.
I think it was a fantastic demo. Thank you. I mean, it just shows the power of this tool. It really is unbelievable that so much data can be shown sort of in one way around one attack and what can happen. It does make it a lot easier. I think the world of technology has moved on significantly, but I do remember in a past life having a team working on a breach, and it was a little bit more complicated to find the data around what was traversing on the network and what was being compromised. Involved a lot more detailed analysis of logs and raw data to some degree than what Cortex is able to show in such a simple way. Whilst we are, I think we can allow people to do the quiz. I would maybe like to ask William to come back on stage and just see if there are any questions as well that have come through at this stage from any of our viewers.
Yeah, I see.
So there are 2 that have come through, and these came through just, I think, William, after your session, but we can ask the 2 of you. One is, what is your opinion on saving passwords just so that you don't have to type them every time?
Well, it's much better than using the same password for every single account that you've got. So I'm currently using KeePass. There's a lot of products out there that you can use. Something that will preferably use a YubiKey or SSH key or something to log in with, and then it just sits in the background and it fills in your passwords for you. That's always a good thing. So you can have massive long passwords, like 200 character passwords for accounts that you've got.
Thanks. And maybe just on top of that, what about what's your recommendation on sort of browsers that do the automatic strong passwords, for sites? Are they a good idea to keep passwords in the browsers, or is it still better to rather have a separate tool to manage that?
Yeah, I prefer to have a separate tool to do it. I still don't really trust the way the browsers save those passwords on the machines. So yeah, it's pretty much keep your passwords for yourself, know where your database is, and manage it.
Okay. And the second question was, do you have advice for 2FA, or so two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication?
Well, obviously multi-factor is better, but at least two-factor auth will prevent most of the attacks. So if you've got, let's say you log into Facebook and you get a PIN that you need to type in. Now that's 2FA. If you've got Authenticator app on your phone that you need to approve all of your access, that's MFA. That works much better. But yeah, I think it all depends on the use case and what you can implement in your company. But at least MFA is standard on Office 365, so please enable it.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest
and on your
things
personal accounts as well. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize you can do it on something like 365, even if you've got a personal 365 account. You don't have to be part of an enterprise to enable multi-factor authentication using the app. So, Lee, I've got a question for you. That demo that you've just given us, are you able to provide, that to our customers? Can they see a demo? Can they trial out Cortex in their own environment to in a reporting way, just to see what is actually happening? Is that something that's available?
So we've got some really cool hands-on workshops that are actually available to customers and partners. There's actually a schedule. So after this session, maybe what we can do is, if we're sending out any data to the customers that have participated in the webinar, I can give that schedule. They're scheduled on a monthly basis. And what's really nice about the hands-on workshops is it gives you a test drive of XDR, where they give you a lab guide and they step you through certain scenarios. And then obviously you get some kind of experience on the XDR. Otherwise, they can obviously reach out to Westcon and let us know if they want to engage further. We can obviously do some kind of proof of value for them. We could also do further demos, for example, lots of options.
Okay, perfect. I believe that most people are responding on question 8 now on the quiz. So I think what I will do in the interim while people are finishing that up is to introduce our next speaker. So firstly, to Lee and to William, a big thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your presentations. It's been great to hear from you. And I'm sure everybody has enjoyed it. Look forward to chatting to both of you again. Truly appreciate your time to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the last presenter for today is a virtual presentation within a virtual environment. What I mean by is, unfortunately, Neil Thompson, who's our Senior Vendor Business Lead for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, looking after Palo Alto Networks at Westcon and based in the UK, is unfortunately ill. And he wasn't able to make a live presentation today, but what he has done is kindly enough recorded his presentation. And he will give you a very quick overview of why partnering with Westcon will help you grow your Palo Alto Networks business. And so I would like to then hand over to Neil's recording. And after that, I'll get everyone back and we'll be able to announce the winners of our quizzes.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to just take you through to the close of this session today. Thought it would be a good idea just to give you a quick update on our current relationship with Palo Alto Networks, give you some updates on some of the key programs and initiatives that are available to you in South Africa. So if I just give you a bit of a high-level overview of kind of where we are, right? So, Palo Alto remains a hugely strategic partnership and relationship with Palo Alto since our inception about 9 years ago. We currently operate in 16 countries and regions, and we are one of only 2 pan-EMEA distributors. Palo Alto has become our #1 vendor on our line card, and #2 across the whole of EMEA behind Cisco. As you can see, we operate a huge logistical operation and have been working really hard throughout the pandemic to get equipment into South Africa on a regular occasion. As well as a fully fledged service offering, we have trained a record number of delegates through our ATC, and we are deemed to have a best-in-class ASC also serving our customers. To support this, we also have our centralized demo pool, of which you can access through your South African team. What we're really all about here is operationally very efficient, but from a people perspective, this is all about driving enablement. This is all about driving lead generation. This is all about driving programs and initiatives that are going to help pipeline creation with you, our customers. And we can't do that without specialism with each of our teams. So every team in the entities that we have at Westcon, where we have a Palo Alto contract, we have dedicated resources. Right? So as well as having an overall community, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, we have dedicated resources in each of the entities, and that's no more so than in South Africa itself. These dedicated resources live and breathe Palo Alto Networks. That are very foot around driving the initiatives and programs, communicating and networking around the messaging, both given to us by Palo Alto and created from myself and the central team at Westcon. A huge amounts of support, huge amounts of planning and business cadence, and driving huge amounts of pre-sales enablement, which is very much geared towards building your business and building our business together. And how do we do that? And so what? So the way we're structured is that we're very much a community. Palo Alto Networks has over 65 dedicated resources at Westcon, and a lot of the strategy and a lot of the planning, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the initiatives that each of the countries will see is driven from the central team. Currently there's 3 of us, and that will soon expand to 6, which will really help support, grow and enable our local teams to deliver some of these key programs that we have available for you. On the left-hand side, standard communication, standard communication out to our partners. We do a huge amount on social media, but we also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up to, that's available on request. In the middle is a flavour of some of our cornerstone EMEA initiatives. We are constantly adding to this list, but some of the cornerstone initiatives here are very much geared towards Palo Alto's strategic goals and objectives. We have Lifecycle in the top left. We have our commercial VIP club, which is very much geared around Liftoff, which is Palo Alto's own program. We have a online learning tool through our internal portal called Brainshark, where a learning lab allows you to log in and learn a little bit more about the speedboat and portfolio from Palo. And on the right hand side, you've got lead generation, effectively. So verticalized lead generation, effectively asset management, and driving messaging, particularly around the growth technologies. So that's Cortex and Prisma, particularly around lead generation in that area. And then moving on, although this is a very wordy slide, this is effectively the EMEA toolkit. So behind each one of these programs or initiatives in each of the work streams sits behind some messaging, some collateral, some programmatic information that you can call upon your South African team at any time and provide some details. We can run through scenarios and gateways to getting the information through to you, supplying you with the information, and this will allow you to help grow your business in South Africa. So rather than taking each one of these, because there's a huge amount on the screen here, is that we'll provide a follow-up to this where we will give you a pack of information, or if on request there's certain things that pop up to you that you'd like more information on, we can also send these through to you. But 98% of these are live. The material is available and it's customer facing, and will absolutely allow you to talk to your end users. And one of the tools that I just wanted to pick out of that toolkit was a tried and proved method of being able to track your revenue to help onboard new customers to Westcon, but also grow and enable those customers that are already onboarded and partner with us. So we want to take you through a bit of a journey. We want to support you all the way through, both through the Next Wave Partner Program, but also through periods of planning, periods of growth, where we can work together to support you. And on the previous slide, all of that information that's readily available to you on request, that we take you through a partner journey where we really help you grow and accelerate your business. So we have this as a sort of printed or a blueprint model of how we onboard, grow, develop, and move a partner through a journey. And then just to close, and just to summarize, your business is really important to us. We want to continue to work with you to help grow together. And to summarize, there is not only the resources, not only the programs, and not only the initiatives, but there's a tried and tested method of being able to move our partners through a journey, get them fully fledged, move them through the Next Wave Partner Program. We've got a very structured way in which we do this, and this is really just to sort of summarize some of the key talking points and the key reasons why you would come and speak to us. And this ranges from that huge amount of sales enablement. We're very much around enablement around lead generation, but also supporting some of that pre-sales activity with your customer. So please do give us a ring today. My details are on request, but please call your local South African team today, and we'll be in touch about any of the collateral and information and seen over the last sort of few minutes. Very much interested in talking to you. If you have any further requirements or updates on the information provided, or you need further details, please do let us know, and we'll filter that through to you. So thanks very much for listening. Really appreciate the time today, and also from all of the guest speakers that have spoken. Hopefully you found this a really good event, and yeah, we'll absolutely be in touch. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks very much for Neil, and I really appreciate the fact that he took the time to record that. I know you've been feeling pretty under the weather. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the show. I hope you've enjoyed the sessions. It's a fairly quick show today, but I think it was really informative and extremely interesting. Again, a huge thank you to William and to Lee for their presentations and the demos, which I hope you all found really insightful. And as Neil has called out, if you require any help and support around your Palo Alto network environment, please contact us, contact our teams. If you have the account managers already, else contact us on our website, and we will make sure to get back to you and support you however we can. Now, I managed to, we've got the winners from the 2 quizzes that we want to announce now. I'm just checking if we're going to have a slide that's going to come up with the names, but I will announce them. So the first one was the quiz that William gave, and the winner is Johan Griesel from CCD Couriers in South Africa. So well done to Johan. We will make sure that your Take-A-Lot voucher is sent across to you ASAP. And then the second prize was for the winner from Lee's quiz, and the winner is Fabio Caldera from Network Configurations in South Africa. And also, Fabio, well done, and we will get that Take-A-Lot voucher across to you as soon as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your diaries to be with us. Hope that you learned something, and look forward to chatting to you all again soon in person at some point. Stay well, and please do give us any feedback around the event or anything further that you'd like to find out from us. Let us know. But on that note, I'm signing off, and I wish you all the very best.